Hey, folks. I have not been able to have a conversation with Larry. I did get a 5-second call from him today, this morning. Sometimes he accidentally hits the video button, and mostly it just shows his ceiling. But I did catch a glimpse of him today, and he looked very gaunt, and he said that he has a high fever. So, Susan, thank you. Going to the polls is very important. Did you hear? Sorry, I thought I had turned the volume off my phone. Let me just do that real quick. Did you guys hear what Governor Kate Brown did in Oregon today? She announced further lockdown until November 3rd. Now, that doesn't, it wasn't clear whether that was the end of the day, midnight, November 3rd. Therefore, you can't go to the polls. Now, I do know that Oregon's system is a vote by mail system. So, you can pretty much count Oregon out for Trump. But I would ask you folks to please pray for Jo Rae, R-A-E, Jo Rae Perkins. She is an incredible lady who is running for office, and I think she's running for Senate. She tried to run in 2018 for the House, and I think she's bumped it up to Senate, but I'm not sure which part of Congress she's trying to get into. But Jo Rae Perkins, please, please, please pray for her to win, because that would be an incredible asset for our side in Washington, D.C. She loves the Lord. I'll tell you in a minute, Frank, I've seen a lot of her live. She goes live on Facebook very often. I've got several friends who are friends of hers and have spoken very, very highly of her. She's well-spoken. She can really communicate. She knows her stuff, and she would be a real asset. So if you live in Oregon, please support Jo Rae Perkins. If you don't live in Oregon, support her through prayer. I'm not going to ask for competing donations when Larry is so much in need. So, Frank, where Larry's at home. He is fighting a high fever, and he said he's just too sick to come today. Now, folks, remember, I told you yesterday, on Sunday, he worked, I don't know how many hours. I know he worked at least 6 hours straight. I heard him. We were supposed to strategize on what this operation was going to be, so that we could work together, and we were going to strategize together. I'll answer that in a minute. But he, by the time he was done and called, he was so exhausted. He said he needed to sleep, and we talked yesterday. And then, of course, I didn't hear from him at all yesterday, and got like I said, a 5-second call from him today. He said he couldn't be on the show because he was just too sick. So he looked haggard. So I will say that, because I did get a glimpse of him. So that's where Larry is. So he is trying his best to recover so he can be back, because he is, folks, if we think we're frustrated at his being out of the game, it is nothing compared to how frustrated he is. And God knows this. God knows that Larry was going to be sick this year. Like he told us, he's been on events 7 times. And when I didn't hear from him yesterday, I was really worried that he was back on event. And of course, if they're going to put you on event, then they have to, knock you out. He's been on the vent before, down with the tube down his throat into his lungs, and been awake. But that is, they know him. He pulls it out. So, that's something I knew from a couple of years ago before I ever moved. So, So Obama fired all federal judges. A president can fire federal prosecutors in their first term. They cannot fire federal judges until second term. Even if the federal judges are fired, they still get to keep their salary. It's just that they are removed from office. So the expectation is that he will do it in his second term. He has, that is the expectation of what he will do. So that's the difference. No, Frank, it is not too late for Larry to get back in the game. Believe me, he is very much thinking and strategizing when he is awake. And it is not too late for Larry. Don't count him out. You have no idea what he can accomplish in a short term. Because don't forget, there are very few people. Frank, I answered your question about the judges. Trump can't do it until his second term. Firing judges happens in a second term. You cannot fire them in your first term. So I did answer that. So I guess you weren't listening, huh? Well, I'm just telling you what Larry has told me, okay? So if it's not true, then you can cite the source of where your information is coming here so we know that you are proving yourself with information that is true enough to stand up in a court of law. That is Larry's qualification, because that is what he has done his whole life, that he was not going to say something unless he could prove it and it would stand up in a court of law. So that's Larry's standard. If you can prove, no, the second term is not lame duck. The second term, he can do a whole lot more. The lame duck doesn't happen till after the election, at the end of his second term. So I have put up the meme for us to work on, or the question for us to put out today on social media. Whose list is longer, Biden's accomplishment in 47 years or Trump's? Now, Trump, we know, has been in 3.5 years. Frank, that's enough. If you're going to continue to be negative like this, then I'm going to have to block you, and that's your warning. So don't do this anymore. We have heard what you've had to say. You don't need to continue to do it. So we want Larry's plan right now is for everybody to put out a short meme every day. So let's do this today. Whose list is longer, Biden's accomplishment in 47 years or Trump's accomplishments, okay, in 3.5 years? So yes, I heard that, James, as well. We have to be expecting and be very careful. We have to be careful about and aware and awake to what is happening. And we have to be careful about what we're eating, what we're drinking, where our source is. We have to be careful. What can I say? We have to be careful. Keep your body as healthy as you can. Keep your body as healthy as you can, because that improves your immune system. And the stronger your immune system, the more resistant you are to what comes through. When my daughter was in Africa, she ended up with amoebic dysentery. She got very, very sick. But fortunately, there was medication that she could take. So, all right, I warned you. So you're done. That was negative, and we won't have any more of that here. Okay. One of the things, Larry, I did talk to him, was it Friday or Saturday, at some point over the weekend, and we were going to start talking about strategy. He said one of the most important things is we have to be focused on what's the most important. So the most important thing is we have to get Trump back in office for a second term. Because if we expect freedom to worship God and gather together if we expect freedom of speech, our First Amendment rights. We have got to have Trump in office because we know they are all going. Remember what Kamala Harris has already said. If you were a Trump supporter and we get in, we're coming after you. We're taking you out. So it is very important that we focus on making sure that Trump gets back in office. We need to focus on the major issues. I mean, for crying out loud, look at we really do have what Moses told the people as in a message from God before he died. I think it's Deuteronomy 28. Just a sec, I just have to turn one more page. Deuteronomy 30. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life so that you and your children may live, and so that you may love the Lord your God and listen to his voice. For the Lord is your life. Now, that's the choice we are facing right now. We have the choice between life and death. We have a choice between the blessing on our land or the curses that come on our land. Don't forget Genesis 12, 12:6 or 12:8, where God promised Abraham that people that blessed any country or any people who bless his seed will be blessed, and those that curse the seed of Abraham will be cursed. Now, look at this. Jesus said that we have become the seed of Abraham because we have been grafted in as followers of Christ. And don't forget that, the Muslims come from Ishmael, who's also the seed of Abraham. So, I mean, we need to be speaking blessing, not cursing it altogether. But look what our president has done, being the first to move the capital to Jerusalem, declaring Jerusalem is the capital. And now look what's happening. Kosovo and Serbia and UAE and now Mali and Chad is now in negotiations with Netanyahu for relationships. We know in the Bible it talks about a covenant with many, and the Antichrist being revealed very shortly after that happens, because they're going to start saying peace and safety. But stay alert to what's happening. But the bottom line is our president is working on this. The issue is not to be dividing Israel any further, that because the ones that divide Israel and promote that are going to have their own land divided. And we've I've talked about that before. I'm sure you've heard things like that. So, look at one of the things Biden did. When the Navy SEAL Team 6 took out bin Laden, that was a top secret mission. And any time the Muslim leaders have been taken out by our military, they get very angry. Look how angry they got when Soleimani was killed. So taking bin Laden out enraged Muslims, and it was very important to protect the identity and not even mention SEAL Team 6. And who's the one that spilled the beans and had them all killed? It was Biden, who publicly said it was boasting that it was SEAL Team 6, Navy SEAL Team 6 that took out bin Laden, naming their names. And then when the Chinook helicopter with 47 people on board, including the Navy SEAL team, was shot down, they died. All 37 of them died. This is the kind of people we want, somebody who can't maintain security and privacy with information that's not supposed to be public. That's classified. That was classified information. Pam, thank you. It really is good to be safe, but we have got to be careful about spreading rumors. This is, James, you've got to pay attention to this. Remember, have the proof that stands up in court. We have got to be careful about that. And that's why there's some discrepancy in how some of us feel about vaccines versus what Larry is saying. He has not seen the list of ingredients to verify and prove that what we have heard is real. We haven't heard that yet. And he said until he sees the list of ingredients and can verify their danger, he is not going to come out against it. So this is one of those circumstances. We really do have, and Ray, by the way, Gloria is R-A-E, J-O-R-A, capital R-A-E. And her last name's Perkins. We have to be careful. We have to be careful. All right. I'm not going to go a whole lot longer. And I was doing something I'm not going to read the Bible today, other than I'm going to just talk about a couple things. We've had some discussions in here about people not knowing what to read. I have heard that you can read through the Bible in 70 hours at pulpit speed, which is basically if you were to read aloud at the speed I'm talking, you could get all the way cover to cover in 70 hours. So if you were to read an hour a day, you'd be through the Bible in 3.5 months. If you read half an hour a day, you'd get through the Bible in 7 months. If you did 15 minutes a day, it would probably take you about 9.5 months. And if you read 5 minutes a day, 2 years and 4 months. Now, I looked up, there are 1,189 chapters in the Bible. If you read one chapter a day, now remember Psalm 119 is very long. It's 176 verses, I think. And yet Psalm 117 is only 2 verses long. So, you can balance out that when you get a really long chapter like that one. But if you read one chapter a day, you can get through the Bible in 3 years and 3 months. And I was looking at a website that was giving some suggested books to read that I thought was very, very good. Remember, if you read one proverb a day, you can get or one chapter, not one proverb, one chapter of the book of Proverbs a day. It's 31 chapters long, so that's one chapter a month. Psalms has 150 chapters, so if you read 3 chapters a day, you're going to get through the book of Psalms in a month. One of the things that I figured out is if you read 3 Old Testament chapters and then books, 3 Old Testament books, and then read 2 New Testament books, you'll finish both testaments in about the same amount of time. One of the suggestions that I looked up today was suggesting books of the Bible to read, and this man, I think he was a professor, reading to understand. What he recommended is starting with the books that will give you a good overview about what the Bible is about, and start there. So if you read Genesis and Exodus, that's talking about the beginning of of biblical history, the beginning of life. Joshua goes from Exodus. It's the next bit of history. And then the 2 books of Samuel and the 2 books of Kings tells you about all the kings. Samuel is going to talk about Saul and David, and you're transitioning into can't remember whether Solomon is in Samuel or in Kings, but that's where you kind of transition. The book of Kings is where the 2 nations, where the nation of Israel split into Judah and Israel. And so the book of Kings takes you through, the rest of the kings until the northern kingdom and southern kingdom were taken into captivity. Then Ezra and Nehemiah talk about coming back to Israel to reestablish and rebuild. Habakkuk is a good prophet to give an overview of prophecy and what the prophets thought. The book of Proverbs, of course, is just wisdom literature. And then when you get into the New Testament, Luke is one of the longer books and has not the longest, but it's a good basic overview of Christ's life because it talks about his birth, his ministry, and his death. And then Dr. Luke wrote both the book of Luke and the book of Acts. And so the book of Acts tells you the history of the beginning of the Christian church, pretty much until Paul was died in Rome. And then Ephesians is an overview of theology. And then, of course, Revelation is your final book of prophecy. Revelation, don't think that Revelation 1 through 22 is in chronological order, because it's not. It's cyclical. And so a lot of the seals, the bowls, and so on they overlap timing-wise. Anyhow, for those of you that have had some questions, that we've discussed this before, but for those of you who've had questions about reading the Word, that would be my suggestion. Lumita, is that how I say your name? Pretty name. Sorry, swallowed the wrong way. Dr. Judy Mikovits and Robert Kennedy Jr. are very informed on what's happening in the medical community and the vaccine community. And I would highly recommend them for information because of how well informed they are. Mike Adams has a lot to say, and Natural News. Dr. Buttar, B-H-U-T, I don't remember if it's two T's or one T, A-R. He's a Muslim doctor, but he is very, very informed on things like that. So he's another one. Dr. Tenpenny, I think Dr. Tenpenny is an osteopath, and she has had a lot to say as well. I think there's one other. Dr. Graves is somebody that L.A. Marzulli has interviewed, and I think Dr. Graves is from Michigan. There's a Susie Cohen, who's in, I think, Massachusetts. There's a Julian Whitaker, who is quite elderly at this point, but has a practice out in California. Linda, Larry called for about 5 seconds. He has spiked a high fever, and he just doesn't have the energy. He really pushed himself. He pushed himself so very hard on Sunday with whoever he was doing consultation work with. So he just, I know he was talking with folks in DC on Sunday for at least 6 hours. I don't know if it was the same people. I don't know if it was one after the other. I don't know if it was a team. I have no idea who he was just talking to, but he was absolutely exhausted. And I think when he called and said he needed to rest, he may not have even been done with whatever consultation work he did. And so I think as his fever was starting to go up Sunday from pushing himself, he was losing his voice. Now his voice sounded a little better today, but he's feeling very weak today. So thank you, Donna, about that. Anyhow, let's stick to the main thing. We're trying to do this program, and I need to talk to Larry about calling it Operation Daisy Chain after the comments that were made yesterday in the chat about what that means. So for me, it was just something innocent and fun that little girls would do with flowers. But anyhow, apparently Daisy Chain has some other connotations that we may not want to be associated with. So the suggestion today is look at the question on the screen, post that as a meme. That's a great idea, MW. I will do that. Let's put this question up. Whose list is longer, Biden's accomplishment in 47 years or Trump's? So what we want to be doing is every day posting something in social media, send out to emails to people. Just plant a seed, plant a thought for people to think about. So, Tiny Jewel, I'm not even going to comment on that because that just sounds ridiculous. So, yeah. We've got to be so careful about the kind of things that we're listening to because there is a lot of fake information being put out. It's amazing how many things that I have heard and taken to Larry, and he says, that's not true, that's not true. That came straight from the Democrat Party. They are doing so much to undermine what most of us care about. So be careful what you spread. Be careful what you believe, okay? All right, I'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully Larry will be back. He cannot go back to the hospital to get any kind of treatment that he needs until he gets some more money. They said that he had to pay at least $1,200 towards his copay that Medicaid did not cover, and that he would not be allowed to be seen unless he came in with $1,200. So that's a problem. So if anybody can do anything to help, I'm going to change. Remember in the description box, right underneath here, there's a little triangle a triangle arrow. And if you click on that, then the description box drops down. And if you can't use Larry's PayPal account, then you need to text me 240-499-6729, and I can give you alternative ways to donate. So thanks for any help you can do. I don't quite understand what you're saying about try survival food suggest. Scott, boy, I have your back on that one. It's not fair to Larry, but you know what? God is in control, and God has allowed him to go through what he's going through. This man, I'm reading through the book of Job right now and seeing how many things in Job's complaints that remind me of what Larry has had to go through. But the bottom line is God is in control. God has allowed for a reason. God promises that his plans for us are good, and God promises to work things out for good and work things together for good if we love him and trust him. And Larry is doing his best. He's forgiven. He knows he's forgiven. He has, I think, finally come to a place where he's forgiven himself for what is the past, and he's working very hard to do things differently, and has been for decades, for over 3 decades. He's been a Christian now for about 30 years. So when he came to Christ, it completely changed his life, his what he was trying to do. And, I think anybody who wants to hold out against him what he did in the past is not of God, because if God can forgive him, then how dare we not? So, all right. Pray that he'll get over this fever. He spikes fevers quite often. I don't quite, I'm not medical, so I don't quite know what that's all about. But he walks a fine line between life and death on a constant basis. And remember, he told us he died 5 times this year, and they brought him back. So thank God for that. They gave up on him 2.5 years ago, and our team went to prayer, and we had 12 people on a conference call together, and he came back and shocked everybody. And, he has died many times since I got involved with him on his team. Not involved with him. That's not the way to say it. Since I got involved on his team since 2016. So he keeps coming back. God's not done with him yet. So that's it. God, God will continue to be in charge of what's going on. So let's do our part, be in prayer, and put up the question on social media that what did I say? Whose list is longer? Biden's accomplishments in 47 years or Trump's? We know what the answer is, but we need to remind people to be paying attention. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll be back tomorrow, and hopefully Larry will be back. If I know for sure he's back, I will put up his picture. And I'm sorry about yesterday having his picture up, not knowing he couldn't be here, because if I don't put it up, I can add it at the last minute, but I don't know how to take it off at the last minute. So once it's up, it's up. So that's my lack of technological skills. So, thank you, Michelle. Fever means your immune system is killing something off. So, let's just pray that the fever is going to do its work and get rid of what needs to be gotten rid of, and he'll come back stronger. So God bless y'all. Bye.